मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतः पदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशधारिणे वंशाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण। So welcome all of you all for our Gita overview session. So today we are going to discuss chapter 6 called Dhyan Yoga. So before we get into chapter 6, a quick overview of all the 5 chapters that we have done till now. The first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, was entitled Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. The acronym for chapter 1 was Doubt. So D stood for Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan. This was verse number 1 to 12. O stood for ominous result, 13 to 20. U stood for uncertainty, 21 to 27. Bewilderment, and then finally turning point. So the acronym for chapter 1 was doubt. Okay. What was the acronym for chapter 2? Gita. Very good. The acronym for chapter 2 was Gita. And what does Gita stand for? Guru. The first 10 verses of chapter 2 was explaining the concept of Guru. 11 to 30 verse number in chapter 2. Oh. Okay. There's something loose there. ठीक है. हाँ ठीक. Okay, so 11 to 30 was identity, the topic of the Atma. 31 to 53 spoke about the 2 kinds of dharma. And last section of chapter 2 spoke about the liberated souls, Atma Rama. So this was chapter 2. What was the acronym for chapter 3? 3, yes, TREE. So chapter 3 was called Karma Yoga, chapter 2 was called Sankhya Yoga. So the acronym for chapter 3 was TREE. The first set of verses, the first 9 verses of chapter 3 spoke about the principle of Tyaga. Right? Remember this, Arjuna was confused whether he should fight or he should renounce. The next section spoke about rungs on the yoga ladder, different levels of the yoga ladder, 10 to 16. And 17 to 25 verses of chapter 3 spoke about the principle of setting an exemplary example. And the last E spoke about enemy. What does this enemy refer to? Lust. Very good. So this was chapter 3. Chapter 4, what was the acronym? Years. Yes. What is the title for chapter? The name of chapter 4? Transcendental knowledge. So transcendental knowledge you get it through years. So therefore the acronym for chapter 4 is years. So verse number 1 to 10 spoke about eternal education. 11 to 15 accurate understanding. 16 to 24 about various reactions. And then the last section 25 to 42 spoke about different kinds of yajna or sacrifice. Chapter 5, which we did last week, what was the acronym for chapter 5? Step. Correct. Very good. So acronym for chapter 5 was STEP. You can see steps here. So the first section 1 to 12 verse number spoke about staying in this world but not of this world. What example did Lord Krishna give? Of a lotus leaf. Lotus leaf is there in muddy water, still unaffected. So I think this will go on and off in between. वो वाला नहीं, you have to touch. हाँ, that is the power wire. Yeah, ठीक है, no issue. 3 doers. The next section 13 to 16 spoke about the 3 doers. Who are the 3 doers? Ourselves, Atma, Prakriti, and Paramatma. Equal vision. We describe this. Pandita Samadarshana. You know how a liberated soul, a knowledgeable person sees everyone with equal vision. And the last verse, last section spoke about the peace formula. So this was the overview of the first 5 chapters. So today we are going to do chapter 6. Chapter 6 is another important chapter called Dhyan Yoga. The acronym for chapter 6, what we are going to do today, is EASY. EASY. Verse number 1 to 9 stands for mind. Mind, which can be the enemy of the soul or the friend of the soul. E stands for enemy or friend. Verse number 1 to 9. We will get into these sections. A stands for Ashtanga Yoga, because this chapter 6, Lord Krishna explains Ashtanga Yoga or Dhyan Yoga. So this is the whole section from 10 till 36, almost towards the end of the chapter. And the last section, Arjuna is asking a question to Lord Krishna. What happens if a yogi doesn't complete this path? What happens to him? So Lord Krishna is explaining about a successful yogi and the destination of a failed yogi. Success and failure, verse number 37 to 45. And the last 2 verses, the why in this acronym EASY speaks about a yogi. Who is the highest yogi? Lord Krishna explains in this. So the acronym for chapter 6 is EASY. Right? Yeah. So Prabhupada, in the beginning part only of this chapter, Prabhupada explains a very beautiful verse which comes in the Bhagavatam. Prayena alpa ayushya sabya kalau asmin yuge jana mand sumanda matayor mand bhagyai upadrata. See, this chapter speaks about Dhyan Yoga, but Arjuna towards the end of the chapter very clearly tells Lord Krishna, that it is very difficult for me to practice Dhyan Yoga. And Prabhupada explains, in this age of Kali, we are in Kali Yuga, probably Ashtanga Yoga worked for a different Yuga. But in Kali Yuga, it is very difficult to practice Dhyan Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga. Why? Because first quality of people in Kali Yuga is Alpa Ayushya. Alpa Ayushya means we have very, very short life. Along with that, the next quality of people in Kali Yuga is Manda. Manda means lazy. Lazy about spiritual life. And the next quality is Sumanda Matayo. Sumanda Matayo means less intelligent. People of Kali Yuga, their capacity of intelligence also very less. Manda Bhagya. Manda Bhagya means we are less fortunate. So many problems that we have in this life. So therefore, we are all Upadritaha. Upadrita means disturbed. People in Kali Yuga are very, very disturbed. So if Arjuna in Dwapar Yuga, if Arjuna is telling very clearly that it is difficult for him to practice Dhyan Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, in Kali Yuga it is very, very, very difficult. Impossible. So Prabhupada, right from the beginning of this chapter, from verse 1, practically in every second verse, third verse, Prabhupada will mention this point, that in Kali Yuga, Dhyan Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga doesn't work. The only yoga that works is Sankirtan Yoga. And Prabhupada mentions Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the most important thing. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatiranyata. Lord Krishna mentions this at the end of the chapter, but Prabhupada is one step ahead of Lord Krishna. From the beginning only Prabhupada is mentioning this. just chant Hare Krishna. This is the essence of all yoga, right? So in this chapter, Lord Krishna explains the 8 limbs of yoga. We all know Ashtanga yoga, 8 limbs of Ashtanga yoga. What are the 8 limbs? Anyone knows? Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. So these are the 8 limbs of Ashtanga yoga. Yam, Niyam basically means do's and don'ts. To practice yoga, you have to have certain do's that you have to do and certain things that you have to give up. Then there is pranayam, breath control, then asan, bodily control, and then gradually controlling the senses, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, like that. So Lord Krishna explains this entire sequence of Ashtanga yoga in this section. So Lord Krishna in the beginning mentions what is the qualification for someone to become a yogi. In text 4, Lord Krishna says, Yadahi nendriyarteshu na karmasu anusajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yoga rudas tadochyate. So Lord Krishna explains 2 levels of yoga. One who is a beginner in yoga and one who is advanced, right? So someone who's advanced in yoga, what is his qualification? The qualification that is needed is Sarva Sankalpa Sannyasi. Such a person gives up all desires for sense gratification. And Prabhupada mentions so many times in the purports. In today's world, the word yoga is very famous. Everyone does yoga. But everyone does yoga. Their idea of yoga is just physical asana, some breath control. They don't have an idea that yoga means self-control. So Prabhupada mentions very clearly, if someone is practicing yoga and is not able to control the senses, is engaging in sense gratification, Prabhupada says this is just mockery of the word yoga. So yoga, Lord Krishna says very clearly, Sarva Sankalpa Sannyasi. Such a person gives up all desires for sense gratification. This is the qualification for someone to become a yogi. Right? So Lord Krishna in this section, the first section is from verse number 1 to 9, where Lord Krishna is speaking this concept of enemy or friend. And Lord Krishna is referring to the mind. And Prabhupada mentions it, whether it is Dhyan Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, any yoga, this focal point is the mind. Because ultimately, we have to liberate the mind. Mind is the cause of all trouble for all of us. So the focal point of any yoga is to control the mind. How to deal with the mind, Lord Krishna explains here. So this is text 5. You all can repeat this verse after me. Uddaret atma manatmanam natmanam avashadayet Atmaiva hi atmano bandho Atmaiva ripuratmana. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul as well as his enemy. So Lord Krishna says, we have to use the mind. A mind is a tool given by God. We have to use the mind to elevate ourselves, not degrade ourselves. So Lord Krishna says the mind can be our friend and it can be our enemy. It all depends on us. Are we able to use the mind or is the mind using us? That is the point here. So in this set of verses, Lord Krishna explains that we have to learn to control the mind. Text 6. Bandhuratma manastasya yenatmaivatmana jita anatmanastu shatrutve varte atmaiva shatruvat. So Lord Krishna says, for one who has conquered the mind is the best friend. For one who has failed to do so, the mind is our worst enemy. So the mind can be our friend or enemy depending on whether we are able to control it or not. Just like you have Bhagavad Gita, which Lord Krishna spoke to Arjuna, in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam, there is something called Uddhav Gita, where Lord Krishna speaks to Uddhava. So Bhagavad Gita is like a little short version which Lord Krishna spoke to Arjuna because it was a battlefield of Kurukshetra. Lord Krishna had to really quickly do things. But in the Uddhav Gita, Lord Krishna explains the same concepts in a detailed way. So Lord Krishna there, he tells Uddhava the story of Avanti Brahman. Very interesting story. This Avanti Brahman was a very rich person, very wealthy, very rich. But suddenly he lost all his wealth. He literally came on the road. For someone who's used to so much comfort, suddenly the whole thing is stripped away from you. It was very painful for him. But Avanti Brahman comes with a very beautiful realization. You know what he says? He says, people are not the cause of my happiness or distress. It is not the people. He says the stars are not the cause of my happiness and distress. Sometimes when we are in trouble, we consult an astrologer and they'll tell you, Sade Sati and all that. So this Avanti Brahman says, stars are not the cause of my happiness and distress. People are not the cause. Situations, none of these things are the cause of my happiness and distress. Avanti Brahman says it is only my mind that causes my happiness and distress. In English, there's a saying, the mind can make hell into heaven and heaven into hell. That means, what it means is, if you go to heaven, suppose you go to heaven, but if your mind is mad, your mind is out of control, that heaven will be hellish for you. Because your internal things is not under control, you will not be able to experience that. But if you go to hell, if your mind is in control, even in hell you can remain peaceful. So that state of heavenly experience, hellish experience is all in the mind. Whether we are able to deal with this internal system or not. Right? So in this way, Lord Krishna says, for one who has conquered the mind, text 7, Jitatmana prashantasya Paramatma samahita Shitoshna sukha dukkeshu Tata mana pamanayo. Just see this. Lord Krishna says, for one who has conquered the mind, Jitatmana prashantasya. For such a person, Paramatmana samahita. He's attained the super soul already. That means as soon as you conquer the mind, you're very close to Krishna. And for such a person, Shitoshna sukha dukkeshu tata mana apamanayo. If your mind is under control, whether you experience happiness, distress, honor, dishonor, cold, heat, whatever it is, you'll remain happy. This is a happiness that is not dependent on situations and things. Once you are, I think when we were discussing chapter 5 last week, we were discussing these points about how Lord Krishna explains the concept of happiness. Lord Krishna says happiness is not something outside, it is something that you have to search within. Once you connect to the Atma, once you have controlled the mind, then you can be actually very, very happy. In this way, Lord Krishna explains such a person in the next two verses. Lord Krishna says, text 9, Suran Mitradi Udasina Madhyastha Dveshu Bandhushu Sadhusu Apicha Papeshu Samabuddhir Vishishyate. We were discussing last week also the concept of equal vision. So Lord Krishna says, when your mind is under control, you will not see people as enemies, friends. See, how do we decide who's a friend, who's an enemy? Is there a standard way of deciding? It is the mind who labels. The mind, as soon as some name comes in front of you, the mind will tell you friend or enemy. Based on what? If that person has spoken good about you, the mind will say friend. If that person has spoken something bad about you, the mind will say enemy. So no one is someone born with labels, friend, enemy. People are carrying labels. No one is carrying. The mind is what puts labels to people, and mind puts label to situations. Is there any situation as good or bad? Who decides? Mind only decides. Right? We only decide. The mind decides this situation is good, this is bad. So Lord Krishna says here, for person who has actually conquered the mind, Samma Buddhir Vishishyate, he will see friend, enemies, he will see everyone with equal vision. So this is what we are slowly supposed to come to. The path of yoga it slowly help us to actually control the mind. So in this section 1 to 9, the first section of this chapter is 1 to 9. Okay? Where Lord Krishna is speaking about the concept of mind being a friend or enemy. So we saw first that in Kali Yuga, practicing Dhyan Yoga is very difficult. Lord Prabhupada explains it right in the beginning. And we saw this verse, Prayena Alpayushya Sabya Kalo Asmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Matayor Manda Bhagya Upadrata. Because in Kali Yuga we have short life, we are lazy, less intelligence, all that, right? And we saw the qualification to become a yogi. Lord Krishna explained, Sarva Sankalpa Sannyasi. We have to give up desires for sense gratification. This is the primary qualification. And then we saw 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. Do's, Yam is the do's, Niyam is don'ts, Asana is postures, breath control, all that. And then Lord Krishna explains the last few verses of this section 1 on the mind. If the mind is controlled, it is the best friend. If it is not, it is the worst enemy. So this is section 1, verse number 1 to 9. Now the next section Lord Krishna gets into is Ashtanga Yoga. Detailed description of the process of Dhyan Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. Verse number 10 till 36. Various aspects of practicing Ashtanga Yoga. So in this whole section, just like we saw in Ashtanga Yoga, Yam Niyam is very, very important. Yam Niyam means do's, don'ts. See, anything in life now, there will be certain things that will be useful to you. There will be certain things that is not useful to you. Like someone is a student. What is his do's? The do's can be, get up in the morning, study every few hours a day, do your homework on time. These are like do's. What are the don'ts for a student if someone wants to become really good in his marks, in his studies? What are the don'ts? No TV, no mobile. Good. All parents are speaking this. No TV, no mobile. You have to stay away from wrong friends. If you don't do this, then it's very difficult. How will you pass your exams? Isn't it? Like someone who's practicing to be an athlete. He also has certain things that he should do, certain things that he shouldn't do. They have control on their diet and so many things. So similarly, if you want to advance in the path of yoga, there is something called sankalpa. You have to accept anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varjanam. What is useful, favorable, you accept. What is unfavorable, you reject. This is a very, very important principle. So Lord Krishna, from text 10 onwards, he's explaining sequentially, verse by verse, the different aspects of Ashtanga Yoga. Right? So the first thing Lord Krishna says, okay, if any of you all feel that you all should do Ashtanga Yoga, how many of you all feel you all should do Ashtanga Yoga? The first thing is you should go to the forest. Ghar mein baith ke nahi hoga. You have to go to the forest. Ekaki, you have to do it alone, not in satsang. So in Ashtanga, this is the first thing. The first step only is difficult. To find a forest, peaceful forest is so difficult. So Ashtanga Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, you can't do sitting in a city. You have to go to the forest. You have to do it alone. So first thing Lord Krishna says is Ekaki, one has to do this alone. Yata Chittatma, one has to be very, very focused. Then Lord Krishna, in text 11, Lord Krishna explains one has to prepare the place. Shauche deshe pratishtapya stiram asanam atmanah. One has to make the place, secluded place, alone in the forest, and giving up all desires for enjoyment. One has to prepare the place. So Prabhupada mentions here, Shaucho deshe means a sacred place. Therefore, previously, even great yogis, they would go to the Himalayas, they would go to Haridwar, because wherever Ganga flows, there is a value to it, there is a power to it. So when you practice there, it becomes more easier for you. The vibrations help you focus the mind on Krishna. Then Lord Krishna explains about preparing a seat. Lord Krishna says, Chailanjana Kushottaram. One should have a seat which is covered with deer skin and kusha grass. So for a yogi, kusha grass, someone who's on the spiritual path, especially those who do yagyas, kusha grass is something that is very, very important. The Bhagavatam explains Kusha grass is actually the hairs of Varahadev. The hairs of Varahadev actually come in the form of Kusha grass. So it's actually very, very holy. So one has to prepare a seat like this. So in this way, Lord Krishna explains the various steps. And then Lord Krishna explains, most important is Kaya Shira Griva. This is text 13-14. Samam Kaya Shiro Grivam. So one has to prepare the place and then one has to prepare the body for meditation. So even though we are not Ashtanga yogis, we are Bhakti yogis, but certain principles of Ashtanga yoga are useful for Bhakti also. Like preparing the place, like someone has to chant Hare Krishna, you have to prepare a place, right? The place has to be good, right? It has to be in a nice environment, probably a picture of Krishna in front of you. And your asana should be good. It should not be too soft, not too hard. If you sit to chant, if your asana is too hard, what will happen? Your mind will keep going to that. You will not be able to hear. And if your asana is too soft, what will happen? You'll go to sleep. That everyone knows. वो सबके पास experience है. And then the next most important thing is Kaya Shira Griva. So Lord Krishna says one's body, neck, head should be erect, sitting straight. A yogi, he will sit straight. So japa is also a kind of yoga. When you sit straight, it helps you focus. When you bend down in japa, naturally you will fall asleep also. So sitting straight is something that is very important. So these are definitely Ashtanga Yoga is not for Kali Yuga. Prabhupada is mentioned in the beginning only, but there are certain principles of Ashtanga Yoga that can be very useful, especially when we chant Hare Krishna. Then Lord Krishna says here, Lord Krishna uses the word Sampreksha Nasika Gram Swam. For someone who wants to practice Ashtanga Yoga, what are you supposed to do, You have to stare at the tip of your nose. You can try that. Stare at the tip of your nose. That's what you have to do. If you're not supposed to close your eyes in Dhyana Yoga. Because if you close your eyes, what will happen? You'll go to sleep. If you open your eyes, though, you'll be seeing everything else. So you have to stare at the tip of your nose. घर में जाके करके देखना. So chanting Hare Krishna is better. And this is very, very difficult to do. Okay? And then preparing the mind for meditation. So Lord Krishna says, Vigat the beer, one has to be free from fear. So therefore, in the previously when the yogis would go to the forest, it would be literally a forest. There'll be tigers and so many animals there. But you have to be free from fear. If you are fearful, you will not be able to do. You will sit for dhyan and what will come in your mind is a tiger going to attack? You will not be able to practice it. Right? So it is very, very difficult to practice. Previously, the yogis would do all these things. And then the most important thing Lord Krishna mentions is Brahmachari Vratestataha, preparing the consciousness. Just like you prepare the place, you prepare your body, you prepare the mind, you have to prepare your consciousness. Chetana. Brahmachari Vratestataha. When you are following these principles of Brahmacharya, it becomes easier to focus. Otherwise, there are so many distractions around, it's very difficult to focus. Right? In this way, Lord Krishna explains. And then this is a very important verse, text 17. We'll do 16 and 17. Text 16. Nati ashnatastu yogosti naicha kanta anashnata na chati swapna shilasya Jagrato Naivacharjuna. So Lord Krishna explains another very important principle for a yogi, which also applies to a devotee, the principle of balance. So Lord Krishna says, no one can become a yogi, my dear Arjuna, if he eats too much or eats too less, if he sleeps too much or sleeps too less. So the path of yoga is about balance, finding that balance. Right? Just like a car runs on 4 wheels. All the 4 wheels have to be aligned. All the 4 wheels have to have air. It cannot be punctured. Similarly, to move ahead in the path of spiritual life, you have to have balance of various faculties. The body, mind, even though we are not this body and mind, we are Atma, but we need the body and mind to practice Krishna consciousness. If you are completely sick, it will be very difficult to practice spiritual life. So you have to take care of your various needs also. Like someone who's into a family, right? If there is regular fights at home, when you sit to chant Hare Krishna, what will come? You remember all those fights only, na? So even the balance at home is important, right? So you have to balance things out properly. And then text 17, this is a very important verse. Lord Krishna says, Yuktara viharasya yukta chetasya karmasu yukta swapnavabodhasya yogo bhavati dukkha. Lord Krishna says, for one who is regulated in his eating, sleeping, recreation, work, he can reduce all his misery. So in one sense, yogo bhavati dukkha. Dukkha means to become free from suffering or pain. So Lord Krishna's formula to become free from suffering is balance. Balance your eating, balance your sleeping, balance your recreation, balance your work. Not too much, not too less. What is needed, you do that much, then your life can be very, very good, free from misery. So in this way, Lord Krishna is explaining the various principles of practicing yoga. Having a good place, having your body in proper shape, having your mind in proper shape, having your consciousness properly, and creating a balance in life. And then Lord Krishna explains one has to meditate on the Atma or on the Paramatma, meditate on the self. So Lord Krishna explains here how one should meditate. Text 19. Yata dipo nivatasto nengate sopama smrita yogino yata chittasya yunjato yogamatmana. So Lord Krishna is giving the example of a deep. So just like a lamp, yata deepo nivatasto. Vat means air, nivata means where there is no air. So a lamp that is there in a windless place, the flame is very, very steady. But if you keep the lamp in a place where there's wind, the flame will keep moving, wavering, and it will sometimes vanish also. So just like a lamp that is there in a windless place does not waver, so Lord Krishna says, the aim of a transcendentalist, one who's in the path of yoga, is to steady the mind. So that even when winds come, you're not agitated. Just like now you have that lamp and you put that glass covering on it, right? So that even if wind comes, even if the fan is on, the flame doesn't flicker. So similarly, the path of yoga, winds are there in this world. How can you have a place that is not windy? The material world is a place where there is suffering everywhere. Padam padam yat vipadam na tesham. But if you have that glass frame of yoga, you will not remain agitated. The Bhagavatam 10th canto, first chapter, where the marriage between Devaki and Vasudev is explained. We will get into the story towards the end of this chapter. So there, Kansa was about to kill Devaki. But Vasudevji was such a perfect yogi. In such a situation, he was very calm and peaceful. Because he had that kind of control. So Lord Krishna is saying, such a person has to meditate on the platform of the Atma. And then ultimately, meditating on Paramatma. So this is a very important point. See, meditation, whenever we speak the word of, whenever we use the word meditation, meditation always means on Krishna. Either Krishna as Bhagavan or Krishna as Paramatma. Meditation is never impersonal. So you ask someone, what are you doing? They will tell you meditation. On whom? They will say on nothingness. That's not meditation. But Krishna is very clear here that such a person, he's meditating on Krishna. He's meditating on the Paramatma. So when you meditate on the Paramatma, then you finally reach the stage of Samadhi. See, this Ashtanga Yoga, what is the aim of Ashtanga Yoga? Samadhi. Breath control and asana perfection is not the aim of Ashtanga Yoga. It is just a limb of Ashtanga Yoga. The aim is to reach Samadhi. And what does Samadhi mean? Samadhi means to get darshan of Krishna. So ultimately the purpose is that only. Focus on Paramatma is definitely there. So Lord Krishna in the next set of verses, he explains that such a person who is ultimately, once you follow this path, and you have got darshan of Krishna, once you have found that Paramatma in your life, then you don't want anything else in this world. So if you see this set of verses 20 to 23, there's one verse which says, Yam labdva chaparam labam manyate nadikam tata yasmin stitona dukkena guru napi vichalyate. So Lord Krishna says, Yam labdva chaparam labam. One who has achieved Krishna, one who has attained the darshan of Paramatma, for such a person, he doesn't want anything else. Manyate nadikam tata. He feels that there is nothing higher than this. And for such a person, yasmin stitona dukkena guru napi vichalyate. For such a person, even if difficulties come, he will never give up the process of spiritual life because he's experienced a higher taste. So once you get the darshan of Krishna, then even if difficulties come, you're not affected at all because you are on another level altogether. So in this way, Lord Krishna explains here that one should practice this path steadily, ultimately focusing on the super soul. And then Lord Krishna in this whole section, he explains, if you see text 25, 26, Lord Krishna says, Shane, Shane, we can repeat this words, Shane, Shane, Uparamed, Buddhya, Driti, Grihitaya, Atma, Samstam, Mana, Kritva, Na Kinchit, Apichintaye. So Lord Krishna says, Shane, Shane, Uparamed, step by step. Step by step, this is a process that takes time. If you are like working on this process, step by step you will reach. Like if you're walking to a certain destination may be very far, but if you're taking steps in that direction, you're gradually going closer. So Lord Krishna says in this way, the mind may wander here and there, but one has to bring it back. Text 26, Yato Yato Nischalati Manaschanchalam Astiram Tatastato Niyamaitad Atmani Eva Vasham Naye. So Lord Krishna says, from whenever and wherever the mind wanders, bring it back to yourself. Like for all of us, when we are chanting Hare Krishna, when the mind wanders, what we are supposed to do? Bring the mind back to the sound of chanting. So in this way, Lord Krishna explains this whole section of how one should be an Ashtanga yogi. So generally, people who practice Ashtanga yoga, so these are the various aspects that Lord Krishna mentioned till here: preparing the place, preparing the seat, preparation of the body, sitting straight, preparing the mind, preparing the consciousness by the brahmachari vrata, balancing all aspects of life, meditation on the self and super self. So you see, generally when people practice yoga, their aim is to get certain siddhis in life. Siddhis means perfection, right? So as scriptures explain, like those who have visited Kumbh, right? In Kumbh Mela, you have yogis who come from the Himalayas. They never generally come out. Only during Kumbh Mela they come out. And they have such powers you cannot even imagine. There are some yogis who are living for like 200, 300 years. They come down. Their lifespan is so huge. So generally who practice this kind of Ashtanga yoga, what is their aim? Their aim is to get certain siddhis, right? So just like, we have this example of Spider-Man, Superman. These are all from our Vedic derivatives only. Someone who has, a yogi who has all this kind of siddhis. In our childhood, being from Tamil Nadu, we all used to watch Rajnikant movies. If you see Rajnikant movies now, Rajnikant has all kind of things. Rajnikant, you shoot a bullet, before the bullet reaches the place, Rajnikant will reach that place. He can do all different things. So in Google search, if you can type what Rajnikant can't do, it says nothing. He can do everything practically. So people have this kind of ideas of siddhis. So generally, in our Vedic scriptures, there are 8 siddhis that are mentioned. Ashta siddhi. What is this Ashta siddhi? Anima, Mahima, Garima, Lagima, Prapti, Prakamya, Ishitva, Vashitva. So Anima, Mahima means becoming bigger than the biggest, smaller than the smallest. Garima means becoming heavier than the heaviest, like that, right? Like you have example of Kardama Muni, the Bhagavatam. Kardama Muni was such a great yogi, he created his own planet. Or you have the example of Vishwamitra Muni. Vishwamitra Muni, when Trishanku came to take shelter of him, Vishwamitra actually created a new planet. So someone who is a very powerful yogi, he can bring things from a different place, he can create planets, and he can do all different kinds of things. But this is not the perfection of yoga. The perfection of yoga is ultimately to become a devotee of Krishna. Just like Hanumanji. Hanumanji had all the siddhis. Ashta siddhi nidhi ke data. Asavardhi janaki mata. Hanumanji has all the siddhis. But the most important siddhi that he has is, he uses all the siddhis in the service of Krishna. One time, there was one yogi who came from the Himalayas. He came back to his village. And this yogi, being in the Himalayas, he spent years and years learning the siddhi of walking on water. So he came back to the village and announced in the village, all of you all come, I will show you how I'm going to walk on water. All the villagers came there. And right in front of everyone, he walked on the river. Everyone is very impressed. But there was one small boy who told him, what you have learned is worth 5 paisa. The yogi was very annoyed. Because the boy said, I can cross the river with a boat, just paying 5 paisa. Why you have wasted so many years just to walk on a river? If you have to spend time, better use it for something valuable. So what is the point in getting siddhis of this world, which will anyway go away? So the best siddhi that we have to learn is to worship Krishna. So Hanumanji has all the siddhis. He is worshipped because he uses all the siddhis in the service of the Lord. So becoming a servant of Krishna is actually the biggest thing. So these are the in text in this section 10 to 36. Lord Krishna explains the various kinds of siddhis that anyone can get, Anima, Mahima, like that, right? And there, after Lord Krishna explains this whole section of Dhyana Yoga, Arjuna is very honest. Text 33, Arjuna says, Arjuna Vacha Yoyam Yogas Tvaya Prokta Samyena Madhusudana Etasyam na pashyami Chanchalva Stitam Stiram. Arjuna said, O Madhusudan, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. So Lord Krishna, literally from verse number 10 till 32, Lord Krishna has spoken so many aspects of Ashtanga Yoga. And Arjuna is very, very honest. Arjuna is very clearly telling Lord Krishna, this system of Dhyana Yoga is impractical. It doesn't appear very practical to me. I can't do it. So Prabhupada mentions, see, Arjuna was in a different time zone altogether. So Prabhupada mentions in this point, Arjuna, he was in Dwapar Yuga, he had a long life, was very powerful, he had great weapons, he has great self-control. In Dwapar Yuga, people were more self-controlled, the environment was more favorable. Arjuna has all these facilities. He had Lord Krishna as his friend, but still Arjuna is very clearly telling Krishna, it is not practical for me. So Prabhupada explains here, therefore this system must be considered impossible in the age of Kali. This is Prabhupada's conclusion. Prabhupada told this in the beginning also. It is very impractical in this age of Kali. So this is what Arjuna is very, very honest about his own nature of the mind. And then text 34, which is another very important verse in this chapter. Arjuna explains the qualities of the mind. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna Pramati balavadridam Tasyaham nigraham manye Vayuriva sadushkaram. So Arjuna explains why the system is difficult for him. So Arjuna tells Lord Krishna, my dear Lord Krishna, my mind is chanchalam. Chanchalam means restless. Just like a monkey cannot sit in one place. Or like a child, na? Imagine you take a child to a shopping mall, the child will literally want everything. Anything that the child sees, it will want it. No logic. The child doesn't have any logic. Does the child have any logic? No logic. Anything that he sees, whether it is good or not, he wants it. That's it. So the mind is like that, restless. One thing to another. Just like a monkey keeps jumping from one branch to another, similarly the mind keeps jumping. So the next thing Lord Krishna, Arjuna explains is pramati. The next nature of the mind is turbulent. That's like an ocean. Continuously there are waves. Similarly, the mind has continuous thoughts. Whether it's in the day and night, continuously there is turbulence. There is no peace within. And then balavat. Balavat means very, very strong. So we are like this little child. The mind is literally like a big, huge wrestler. You know, you can imagine this guy is bullying this child. Similarly, mind is like a bully, continuously bullying all of us. Very, very strong to overcome. And then dridam. Dridam means obstinate. The mind, once it holds on to something, it just wants it. Whether it is good or bad. Just like Ravan, his mind hooked on to Sita. So many people were telling Ravan, she will destroy you and your full dynasty. But once the mind hooks on to something, whether it is good or not, the mind just does it. Duryodhan, another example. He was hooked on to getting this kingdom. People were telling Duryodhan, you will die. Duryodhan said, no problem, I'll die. But I'll die like this only. So that's the nature of the mind. Very, very obstinate. So in this way, Arjuna tells Lord Krishna, my dear Lord Krishna, the mind is very difficult to overcome. So the mind has two functions. The mind is the storehouse of past impressions and the mind has future desires. So if you have to understand what the mind is, the mind has two things. One is the mind has sanskars. Past, whatever we have seen, heard, done, all those impressions are there within. Might be in a hidden form, but they are all there. And future desires, unlimited future desires. Just like you go to a river or an ocean, how many fishes you see on top? Very few. How many fishes are there down? Unlimited. So once in a while some desires may come up, but the amount of desires within our heart are unlimited. So these are the functions of the mind, past impressions and future desires. And the mind is what actually causes us pains in this world. There's a saying, na? Watch your thoughts, because your thoughts can become words. And the repeated use of those words can actually become actions. And those repeated actions can become your habit. And those habits will become your destiny. So it all starts with a thought. It all starts with a thought. Dhyayato vishayan pumsan sangaste supajayate. Lord Krishna explains in the second chapter of the Gita. You think of anything wrong, how do we start doing sense gratification? We think about it first. And then we start actually doing it. And then when you repeatedly do it, you get addicted to it. So everything begins with a thought. Everything starts with a mind. Just like someone who creates a building. The building is created in the mind. You visualize that building. Next is you put it on paper. And third is you actually build it. So everything is first created in the mind and then it manifests externally. So similarly, just like Lord Krishna explains in the beginning of this chapter, the mind is the cause of our bondage. The same mind, when we think about Krishna, the same mind can actually lead to our liberation. So these are how habits are created because of the mind. So if we can train the mind properly in Krishna conscious thoughts while we chant Hare Krishna, then gradually we can become liberated. So Arjuna is very honest. Arjuna tells Lord Krishna, very difficult for me to control the mind. So Lord Krishna, he tells Arjuna, text 35, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha असंशयं महाबाहो मनोदुर्निग्रहं चलम् अभ्यासेन तु कौन्तेय वैरागेन च गृह्यते. Lord Krishna says, my dear Arjuna, undoubtedly mind is difficult to control. Asamshayam mahabaho manodurnigraham chalam. Arjuna is saying, my dear Lord, very difficult to control the mind. Lord Krishna is also agreeing with Arjuna that mind control is difficult. Lord Krishna is not saying it's easy. It is difficult. But it is not impossible. So Lord Krishna says there are two ways in which we can control the mind. First is called abhyas. Abhyas is practice. And second is vairagya. Vairagya means detachment. Suitable practice and detachment. So we call this anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam. What does practice means? Doing things that are useful in controlling the mind, helpful in controlling the mind. This is called abhyas. And the most important abhyas that we have to do is chanting Hare Krishna. So therefore this picture. Again, this is our abhyas. When we chant Hare Krishna, this Hare Krishna is called Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And what does mantra mean? That which controls the mind. So this practice we have to do. You have to keep chanting Hare Krishna. Right? This is the most important thing. We have to keep doing practice. Just like a good batsman, how does he become good in it? By practice. No one is born a batsman. Sachin Tendulkar was born with a bat, kya? No. He became Sachin Tendulkar by his practice. So everyone becomes perfect by practice. So practice is something that is very, very important. So practice means doing the same thing again, and it also means doing it consistently. So while we chant Hare Krishna, if you have to control the mind, we have to do it every day. You have to do it. Then only you'll be able to control the mind. So this kind of practice is very, very important. And then Vairagya means detachment. Right? So just like we have certain principles that we follow in Krishna consciousness, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. So these things are very important. Right? Otherwise you are doing something and then you're doing this, it really doesn't help. So you have to be ready to give up things that will take you from the path. We have to be ready to give up the wrong company, which is most important. If you're not giving up the wrong company, very difficult to practice spiritual life. So therefore, asat sanga tyag yahi Vaishnavachar. So Mahaprabhu said, who is a Vaishnava? One who gives up wrong association. Right? You may lose something, but then you will gain a lot in the long run. So this is Lord's proposal. Abhyas, following the right thing and giving up the wrong thing. If you are serious about mind control, we have to do this. We have to do this. Otherwise, it will be like snake and ladder game. Okay, you do something, you go up, and then you get in touch with the snake, you come down. At the end, you are there in the same place only. You are not moving ahead. So we have to follow these two principles. And the third thing that Lord Krishna explains is the principle of neglect. This is also a very important principle. Just like a lion or a tiger, when someone catches this lion and tiger, how is this lion and tiger trained? First thing they do is they put this tiger or a lion in a cage. This lion is used to a free life. Initially, it will start revolting. But slowly, when you don't feed this lion or this tiger enough, slowly it will start to understand that my reality has changed now. If I have to survive, I have to listen to this taskmaster. And then slowly, new tricks are taught. So similarly, for some time we have to neglect the mind. Just like speaking about the principle of Vairagya, once you stop doing something that you are used to doing, the mind will revolt. People who are into addiction, they have this phase called, what is this called? Withdrawal syndrome. Thank you, Mataji. Withdrawal syndrome. Someone who is into alcohol, as soon as he stops, the craving will be very, very strong. That phase, you have to control yourself. If you give in, the whole thing is lost. If you give in, the whole thing is lost. So similarly, we have to learn to neglect the mind. The mind will throw up with something, just forget it. Don't look at it, just neglect it, it will become okay. Gradually it will subside. So in this way, Lord Krishna, in this section, he explains the 4 qualities. Arjuna explains the 4 qualities of the mind, and then Lord Krishna explains ways to control the mind is practice. Practice means chanting, hearing, reading, all these things. Navida Bhakti, that is a practice. And detachment means give up things that are unfavorable and neglect the proposals of the mind. Neglect the proposals. Keep postponing it for your Krishna consciousness. So now the third section, 37 to 45, Arjuna is asking a question to Lord Krishna. Text 37. Arjuna uvacha ayati shraddha yopeto yoga chalit manasa aprapya yoga samsiddhim kamgatim Krishna gacchati. So Arjuna has a very practical question. So Arjuna is asking, my dear Krishna, ठीक है, yoga path is difficult. Still, someone with great guts and determination starts the path, but somehow due to the mind, restless mind, he gives up the path of bhakti, the path of yoga. What happens to such a person? This is Arjuna's question. So Arjuna says that such a person, he will become like a riven cloud. If you see text 38, Kaschin no bhaya vibratascha chinnabram iva nashyati apratishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanapati. So Arjuna gives an example of a riven cloud. What's a riven cloud? Sometimes a cloud generally moves in groups. But sometimes a small part of the cloud may get cut away from the main group and the wind blows the cloud away. So this cloud is not part of the main group and now it is floating somewhere. So literally it is lost in oblivion. So Arjuna's question to Lord Krishna is, someone who's taken the path of yoga, he's cut himself from the entire world. You have cut yourself out. And suddenly the mind takes you away from the path of association of devotees, then you have lost there also, you have lost here also. What will happen to such a person? So Lord Krishna first he explains, my dear Arjuna, in the path of spirituality, there is no loss. No one is a loser in the path of spirituality. This is what Lord Krishna explains very clearly. You may lose for some time, but you will gain back. In the path of spirituality, there may be a pause, but there is never a stop. Delay may be there because you are diverted a little, but you will definitely come back. The Lord never lets go. Right? The Lord never lets go. Even if you have done little advancement in the path of bhakti, you may forget it, but Krishna will never ever forget it. Whatever little we do, Krishna will never forget. And then Lord Krishna explains 2 parts. He says that someone who is practicing the path of yoga, if he has done practice for some time, थोड़े समय तक उन्होंने योग किया है, उसके बाद पतन हो गया है. Someone who's done a short practice of yoga and then he gives up the path, in the next life he will be born in a rich family or in the family of pious brahmanas. So this is what Lord Krishna explains here, text 41. Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvati sama shuchinam shrimatam gehe yogo brashto bijayate. The unsuccessful yogi, after many years of enjoyment in the heavenly planet, after this punya is over, he may be born either in a rich family, shuchinam shrimatam gehe. He is born in the family of a brahmana, in a pious family, or in the family of a rich person, generally. So this is the destination of someone who falls down after short practice of yoga. But in the next verse, Lord Krishna says, if someone has done long yoga, he's just about to reach success and suddenly he falls. For such a person, what happens? Text 42. Atava yogi nameva kule bhavati dhimatam etadhi durlabhataram loke janma yat idrisham. So Lord Krishna says, after long practice of yoga, if you become unsuccessful, you're born in the family of transcendentalists. You're born in the family of devotees, and such a birth is very, very rare. So if you do little practice of yoga and you fall down, you're born in a rich family or in a pious family. But if you have done long practice of yoga and somehow you're not able to complete, you're born in a family of devotees. So the point is, to be born in the family of devotees or to be in association of devotees is the greatest blessing that Lord Krishna is saying here. So Lord Krishna is saying such a birth is very, very rare. Such an opportunity is very, very rare. Right? So this is Lord Krishna's understanding, because such a person in the right association of devotees, he will bloom again. His whole path of spirituality will come back very, very strongly. Right? So this is what Lord Krishna explains. Basically, in essence, there is only a pause, there is no stop. And the scriptures have many, many examples like this. You have this example of Bharat Maharaj. You know the story? King Bharat was a great king, after whom this land is named as Bharatvarsha. So King Bharat, at the age of 50, he just gave up his kingdom to his children and went to the forest to retire. Right? And he was really advancing in spiritual life a lot, practicing the path of bhakti. But somehow, while he was about to die, he got attached to one deer. There was one baby deer. The mother gave birth and the mother passed away. So he got very attached to this deer. And taking care of the deer, he forgot Krishna. He became very attached to the deer. So Maya is very strong. So Maya is so strong that you can get carried away. So Prabhupada in this section of Bhagavatam explains, the problem with Bharat was he was alone. He didn't have association of devotees. No one was there to correct him. So he got lost, he didn't even understand. So Bharat reached a very high stage, King Bharat, but somehow he got attached to the deer, he fell down. He fell down from the path of yoga. Next time he was born as a deer. But in the body of the deer, he could remember that what mistake he had done. So even in the body of a deer, he was very, very detached. He would, stay away from all the other materialistic deers like that. And then he died again. And next time he was born as Jada Bharat. Again a human form. There he perfected his Krishna consciousness and reached back to Krishna. Ideally, King Bharat in that one life, he should have gone to Krishna. He got diverted. What happened? It just took a little longer. What could have happened in one life became 3 lives. So there was a pause, there was a delay, but there was no stoppage. His Krishna Bhakti came back. Understanding? So this is one example. There are many, many stories like this. There's the story of Bilamangal Thakur. Bilamangal Thakur, in his previous life, he was actually a devotee. But somehow, some aparad, something he did, he was born as Bilvamangal. He got very attached to one prostitute. And, enjoying with her, spending time with her. And one day he goes to her and she starts to inspire him for bhakti. And this Bilvamangal, from that point on, he became suddenly a great devotee. Because he was a devotee in his previous life, he got a little carried away. There was some delay, but then he came back to Krishna consciousness. So this is what Lord Krishna explains here. So the summary of 37 to 45 is, no effort on the spiritual path is lost, but the Lord always pulls his devotees back to him. The Lord will never give up on his devotees. Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. So if one doesn't become perfect in this life, either you get birth in a rich family or a punya family, a pious family, or you are born in a devotee family and then you can complete. So this was till 45. Now the last 2 verses of this chapter is the last section which speaks about why yogi, 46, 47. So text 46, Lord Krishna says, tapasvibhyo diko yogi ज्ञानिभ्योऽपि मतोऽधिका कर्मिभ्यश्चाधिको योगी तस्माद् योगी भवार्जुना. So Lord Krishna is concluding this section. He says a yogi is greater than a tapasvi. Tapasvibhyo diko yogi. A greater than a tapasvi is a yogi. Greater than a jnani is a yogi. Greater than a karmi is a yogi. Therefore, at all cost, become a yogi, Arjuna. So Lord Krishna is concluding this chapter by saying, become a yogi. Yogi banna. Now, what kind of yogi Arjuna should be? Lord Krishna explains in the last verse, which is a very important verse of this chapter. Yoginam api sarvesham madgater antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamomata. Of all the yogis, one who with great faith worships me, thinks of me, renders service to me, is the highest of all. That is my opinion. Yoginam api sarvesham. So Lord Krishna is saying, of all the yogis, one is always thinking of me. Madgaten antaratmana. Shraddhavan bhajate yoma. One who is worshipping me, such a person is the highest yogi. So this chapter is Dhyan Yoga. Lord Krishna explained the whole process of Ashtanga Yoga, but he's concluding the chapter by saying, Arjuna, that don't practice Dhyan Yoga, practice Bhakti Yoga. This is what Lord Krishna is saying. So if the entire Gita is ultimately aimed towards Bhakti Yoga only. So Lord Krishna is very clearly telling Arjuna, the highest yogi is one who is a devotee. So Lord Krishna is the one who has created all these yoga systems. He is Yogeshwar. So Lord Krishna's opinion is very, very important. Arjuna so very clearly told Krishna that Ashtanga Yoga is not practical. And Lord Krishna is also telling Arjuna here that Bhakti Yoga is the highest of all. So we have a lot of complex issues in this world, but the solution is very, very simple. Like Prabhupada would always give this example. You come to a room and it's completely dark. Right? You have, and there are many small switches. You put on the main switch, the whole thing comes off. Whole room is lit. Similarly, the process of Krishna consciousness is like one switch. You on this one switch, everything else comes in place. But you may have everything else in place, but if this main switch is off, it will remain still dark. So we just surrender to Krishna, practice the process of Bhakti Yoga, everything else will automatically follow in place. Complex problems have a simple solution, that is surrendering to Krishna. See, Bhakti Yoga is a process where you get maximum benefit. Maximum benefit. Right? Just like, jackfruit. If you have to eat a jackfruit, you have to cut it, you have to apply oil and do all those processes. So other processes are doing all these complex things. Bhakti Yoga is where Lord Krishna has given us the fruit directly. You get maximum benefit by practicing the process of Bhakti Yoga. And you can achieve perfection in a very short duration. We explained in the beginning of this chapter, why is Ashtanga Yoga impractical? Because the time duration of people in Kali Yuga is very, very less. To perfect Ashtanga Yoga, Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dhyana, Dhyana, Samadhi, you will need lifetimes. To practice asanas, perfect to learn all the asanas and pranayam, will take you years together. Where is so much time for people in Kali Yuga? So therefore, the process of Bhakti Yoga, in a very short duration, you can attain perfection. When Parikshit, there's a very beautiful example, a very relevant example for all of us. Parikshit, he had 7 days left. 7 days death notice. Parikshit didn't go and join Ashtanga Yoga classes. He didn't go and join Dhyan Yoga, Gyan Yoga classes, because in 7 days you can't do any of these things. Not possible. Parikshit went and heard Bhagavatam, practiced Bhakti Yoga in 7 days. So Shukdev Goswami, in order to encourage Parikshit, you know what example Shukdev Goswami gives? Shukdev Goswami tells Parikshit, you at least have 7 days. There was a king called Katwanga. There was a king called Katwanga Maharaj. He had only one moment left. How much time? One moment. And that one moment he practiced Bhakti Yoga and went to the spiritual world. So Shukdev Goswami is encouraging Parikshit, at least you have 7 days. Katwanga attained Krishna in only one moment. Which is the bhakti, which is the yoga that you can do in one moment? Only Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga you can attain perfection in a short duration with little effort. With very little effort you can make a lot of progress. And as we have been describing, you don't need too many qualifications. For the other paths, you need a lot of qualifications. You have to take to sannyas, you have to give up family, go to the forest, you have to do all these things. So in the path of Bhakti Yoga, absolutely no qualifications. Wherever you are, in whatever position you are, you can just start. And the process will work because the process is very, very powerful. In all seasons, at all times, this path of Bhakti Yoga can be followed. A child, an elderly man, a woman, a man, practically everyone can follow this process. And because you are surrendering to Lord Krishna takes charge. Prabhupada always gives this example. There is a difference between how the baby monkey travels with the mother monkey and how the kitten travels with the cat. For the baby monkey has to hold on to the mother. If the baby monkey falls, the mother will go. He has to hold on. But for the kitten doesn't have to do anything. The cat will carry the kitten in its mouth. Understanding? So in the other processes, Gyan, Dhyan, Ityadi, you have to work. But in the path of Bhakti, Krishna takes care of you. That security is there from Krishna's side. And we see in the battlefield of Kurukshetra how much Krishna was there to take care of Arjuna, because Arjuna was a devotee of Krishna. And by practicing the process of Bhakti, especially chanting Hare Krishna. So this chapter, right from the beginning till the end, Prabhupada is mentioning this process of chanting Hare Krishna. Dhyan Yoga means chanting Hare Krishna. Bhakti Yoga means chanting Hare Krishna. So just by chanting Hare Krishna, one will attain complete perfection. All one's anarthas will go away. All these things, siddhi, perfection, everything will happen just by chanting Hare Krishna. This one thing is most important. So Lord Krishna is ending this chapter by saying the highest yogi is a devotee. And what it means to practice bhakti in Kali Yuga is chanting of the holy names. This is the most important thing. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Namaiva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gatir Anyata. So I was giving you this example of Devaki and Vasudev when they were getting married. Kansa was driving this chariot and the announcement was made that the 8th child of Devaki is going to kill you. So Kansa immediately put Devaki and Vasudev in the prison. And sequentially, Kansa killed 6 children of Devaki. So our Acharyas explained who is Kansa, who is Devaki. So Acharyas explained Devaki represents a devotee. A devotee. And all of us, we want to give birth to Krishna. We want to achieve Krishna. That is what is there in all our hearts. How do we attain Krishna? So Kansa represents fear of material enjoyment. So Kansa he also has a role to play, right? Kansa represents fear of material enjoyment. That means the more we want to enjoy this world, it is dangerous. The more we are fearful of this material world, it is very, very good. So because Kansa came in Devaki's life, what did Kansa do? Kansa killed the 6 children of Devaki. So similarly, before we attain Krishna, 6 things have to die in our life. What are the 6 things? The 6 anarthas. Lust, anger, pride, greed, envy, illusion. These are the 6 anarthas. Until these 6 die, Krishna will not appear in our life. And how will these 6 things go away from our life? When we are fearful of material existence. What does this fear mean? We should have fear that, Baba, I don't want to take birth again. I want to perfect this life. When you have this kind of healthy fear, it will push you to practice Krishna consciousness seriously. If you feel that chalega, आराम से करेंगे, then how will we speeden up a process? So Kansa speedened up the process for Devaki. So when we fear material existence, by that fear 6 anarthas are destroyed, and then Guru comes in our life. So when the 6 children were killed, who appeared in the womb of Devaki? Balaram appeared. Balaram represents Guru. Guru will come in our life. And then Bhakti arises in her heart, and then Krishna is born. So if you want to attain Krishna, this is what we'll have to go through. So Bhagavad Gita, in essence, has 18 chapters. Okay? So till this point, we have completed 6 chapters. So the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita are divided into 3 sections. The first 6, the middle 6, and last 6. The first 6 chapters, what we have completed till now, most prominently speak about karma. The middle 6 chapters, Lord Krishna speaks about bhakti, and the last 6 chapters, Lord Krishna speaks about jnana. But you will still see, we are in the first 6 chapters, ending of the first 6 chapter. Technically, Bhakti Yoga starts after 6, from 7 till 12. But even in the 6th chapter ending, the first section ending, how does Lord Krishna end it? By stressing on bhakti. So the point is, Bhagavad Gita, the most important message that Lord Krishna is giving here is the process of bhakti. So Lord Krishna, who is the master of all the yoga systems, very clearly is telling that bhakti yoga is the highest, and therefore one has to surrender to Krishna and practice the process of bhakti. So this was the summary of this whole chapter 6 overview. The first 9 verses speaks about the concept of mind being a friend or enemy. We saw in this section how Dhyan Yoga is impractical for the age of Kali. We saw the qualification to become a yogi, to be free from desires for sense gratification. We also saw Lord Krishna speaking about the Ashtanga Yoga, and then Lord Krishna explaining if the mind is controlled, it is a best friend, if not, it is the enemy. The next section, 10 to 36, speaks about Ashtanga Yoga. So in that we saw the various aspects of Ashtanga Yoga, preparing the place, preparing the seat, preparing the body, the mind, consciousness, balance, and everything else. And then we also saw Ashta Siddhi, but then we saw the highest Siddhi is actually to become a devotee of Krishna, to become a servant of Krishna, like Hanumanji. That is actually the highest Siddhi. And then we saw how to deal with the mind. Lord Krishna explains 3-point formula. One is practice the process of Navida Bhakti, detach yourself from wrong things and neglect the proposals of the mind. In the third section, Arjuna is asking the question, what happens to someone who doesn't complete the process of yoga? And then Lord Krishna explains, there is no loss on the spiritual path. If you don't complete it, either you'll be born in a rich family or a pious family, or you'll be born in a family of devotees, and then you'll take up the process from there. And the last section, Lord Krishna explains, the highest yogi is one who's a devotee. Therefore, Lord Krishna is stressing this point of Tasmad Yogi Bhava Arjuna. My dear Arjuna, become a devotee, become a Krishna conscious devotee, a Bhakta Yogi. That is actually the perfection. So we'll stop here. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anyone has any questions, any comments? Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.